Hey, can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Hey everyone, thanks always for joining me here on Reppin. I'm Evelyn, your host. So, 3 words I'd use to describe my next guest would be unstoppable, powerful, and positive. She's an entrepreneur and best known as the only female host holding it down on the nationally syndicated morning show, The Breakfast Club. Recently, in 2020, The Breakfast Club was inducted into the prestigious Radio Hall of Fame because of the impact they've had on culture. Listeners can hear her rumor report, her advice segment, Ask Yee, and current events with Front Page News. Even with her jam-packed schedule, she has an unequaled desire to give back to New York City and to the community. She's been involved with numerous philanthropic efforts, everything from Dress for Success to Coats for Kids. She's also teamed up with the National Black Justice Coalition to bring awareness to World AIDS Day. She's also got a juice bar called Juices for Life in Brooklyn, where she's making healthy juices easily available to the community. And this is just to name a few of her efforts. Due to her willingness to continue to contribute to the community, she was awarded her very own day in New York City. Mayor Bill de Blasio officially declared August 28th Angela Yee Day. That's right, I'm thrilled to have as my guest the one and only Angela Yee. Angela, I am so excited to have you here. I know how busy you are, so thank you so much. It is so good to see you. How have you been doing during these insane and challenging times?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. When I got the request, I definitely was like, okay, she's done amazing things.
Oh, thank you.
So I want to make sure
Thank you
we
so much.
don't miss out on this opportunity. So again, thank you so much for even wanting to have this conversation.
Without question. And I'm so excited that you said yes.
You know what I realized? I've been so busy like for this past year, and it's a different type of busy. Before the pandemic, I was traveling around, running around a lot, going to different meetings. Then when the pandemic first started, I kind of chilled out. I was home a lot. As people were settling into realizing that we're working from home so much, I started getting like a lot of Zoom requests to do different things. So I was pretty much saying yes to everything. And then now I feel like I've been really overwhelmed with work just because for myself, I'm the type of person I have really big ideas.
Yes.
And there's so many things I want to do. And I just sometimes need help implementing them. I'll be like, I want to do this. I want to do this. And I really will put it into motion. And so for myself, it's been developing a good team of people that can help me with the things that I want to accomplish.
I love that you are also a New Yorker, like myself, but you were born in Brooklyn. Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what it was like growing up in Brooklyn, because regardless of what ethnicity you are, I think just growing up and finding your way and place in the world is a challenge for anyone, regardless of what your background is. And I think when you're a minority, there's that added dynamic that impacts you. I guess some people would look at us and say, hey, you're from New York City. We have a diverse, city. It's everything is there. It's very accepting. And that's all true. But still, sometimes when you're from the outer suburbs of New York City, it can be very different. So, can you talk about what it was like for you? Because you are mixed race. Your dad's Chinese, your mom's West Indian.
Mhm.
Can you tell me what your experience was like growing up mixed race?
So, like you said, I grew up in Brooklyn, but the neighborhood that I grew up in was Flatbush. And so it was a lot of Caribbean people. My mom is from this little island, Montserrat. I grew up in a 2-family house. So my grandparents lived downstairs. It was their house. And my parents lived in the apartment above. And it was me and my brother. I have an older brother. And my dad was really the only Chinese person like in my whole neighborhood. I went to public school in Flatbush, from kindergarten to 6th grade. The only Chinese people I knew were like my family members. And so my dad does have a big family and they live in Queens. Every holiday was really that. My mom's an only child. And so my dad had like 8 brothers and sisters, but my mom was an only child. So while her parents lived downstairs from us, my grandparents lived in Queens and they didn't speak English. It was definitely a disconnect on that side of the family. I was a lot closer to my mom's parents than to my dad's parents. And then I think when we were younger, they also had a lot of issues with my dad marrying a Black woman. That wasn't very acceptable for them either. So I think my brother and I, as far as that side of the family, my aunts and uncles were fine, but it was my grandparents especially my grandfather that was not accepting of us, as being part of the family. So I feel like when I was younger, I didn't notice it. I just thought we didn't talk to each other because they didn't speak English.
Oh, I see.
But you hear things, and it's not something that anybody's really addressed so much with us, but we know that's what it is. Like, I've heard little things here and there. Nobody's ever sat us down and been like, this is what your grandparents said about you or thought about you. That's what that was like. And then going to public school, was I think there was only 2 white kids in the whole school. They were twins.
Okay. So it was actually reverse.
Yeah.
So the white people were sort of the minorities, which is a really interesting flip.
I didn't really think much about race at all until I was in 7th grade. And I did this program called Prep for Prep in New York, where they take these kids from the inner city and put them in private school. And so in 7th grade, I ended up going to Poly Prep in Brooklyn. And it was very different and weird for me to be around like a bunch of rich white kids. They definitely, aside from education, there's some cultural things that you need to learn before you have such a drastically different environment.
So how did you navigate that when you were thrusted into this weird world of privilege and, the majority of the people were predominantly white, when you were used to being, in your neighborhood and you were used to a lot more diversity?
Mm-hmm.
How did that impact you when you realized that race was a real issue?
So at first, it was a little weird to me. And fortunately, my brother was there also. He's a year older than me.
Okay.
And so he had already been there for a year.
Okay.
So at least I knew some of his friends. And then the program that I was in, there's a few of us from the program that went there. So we really leaned on each other. I think when, at least we had each other to hang out with. But I used to be embarrassed. Like, nobody would come to my house because nobody was coming to Flatbush. Like, people's parents weren't like, go hang out in Flatbush. And they all had like way nicer houses. And so for me, it would be like me always going to see other people where they were and not really having people come to where I was. And plus, nobody really was from our neighborhood. Everybody was from like Bay Ridge, Park Slope, Staten Island,
right.
And those type of neighborhoods. So nobody was from Flatbush except for the people in the program with me. So I had like 2 lives. I would be at home and they would make fun of me on my block too, because we had a uniform. Well, not a uniform. We had a dress code.
Okay.
We used to always have to wear, either for the girls, you had to wear a collared shirt if you wore pants. And if you wore a skirt, then you could wear a shirt without a collar. And so it was a dress code and, it was a little dorky. They had a yellow school bus that would come pick us up. And that was embarrassing too.
Right.
To get on that yellow cheese bus. And so,
hey, I got on that too.
So it was so embarrassing. So it would be people in the neighborhood. And I was cool. Like, I had friends on the block and then I would go to school and it just was no intermingling. It was just 2 different worlds.
I mean, did you realize you were straddling 2 different societies essentially?
I was so young, I didn't really think that much about it. I just was doing what I had to do. I went to school there from 7th grade to 9th grade, but I couldn't take it anymore. I never really fully adapted to it. I was begging my parents to let me leave. So my brother enjoyed it. He played the crust. I think he had a different experience than I did as a guy. I think for being a girl, like my hair texture was different and financially I wasn't on the same plane as these other women. People had cars. It would take me forever to get to school. If I missed the yellow bus, I had to take the train. It was like an hour.
Right.
I never was completely comfortable there. And so I begged my parents to let me leave. And then I ended up going to public school 9th and 10th grade. Oh no, 10th and 11th grade.
And how did that change your life?
Public school was great. I really had a good time. I'm a very social person and I never socially fit in, I felt like, at Poly. My parents moved to Jersey when I was in 10th grade. I was like, look, I want to go to public school. So I ended up going to public school in 10th and 11th grade and I made some friends that I'm still friends with to this day. And so I'm grateful for that. And Jersey's a whole different experience than Brooklyn.
Oh, yes.
I got my driver's license. I would have never did that. My mom to this day still doesn't really drive. So I got my driver's license because we had to take those classes in school. We didn't have to do that in Brooklyn. And I made some really great friends and I felt a lot more comfortable. It was a lot more diverse. I did have friends that were Black and white at that school and I just felt better.
Well, what's really interesting is that there's no question that you are so social and gregarious. When you felt the separation between the world you were in with the more privileged and elite group, how do you think it sort of shaped how you look at things now? Because after reading so much about you, you are someone who is very aware of community and doing what you can to build others up. And not only that, there's a lot of people that are aware and care about people, but don't do anything about it, right? But you're actually out there doing the work. And it was really interesting that your brother may have had a different experience and that gender could have played a part in that. How do you think that experience of you, realizing the gender discrepancies between even you and your brother, the socioeconomic, all of those complex issues that you experienced then, how do you think it affected you?
I believe that I have a lot of empathy for people. And if you ever watch The Breakfast, because I am very much the when they go low, we go high person.
Yes.
And I have always been like that. There's a lot of times that I hold my tongue and don't say things that I could say.
Right.
And I do that just because I do have empathy.
Right.
There's situations I've been in where I could like put somebody on complete blast and just go all in. And I've never been that type of person because it's a few different things here. I analyze people all the time. When you do that, like when somebody's sitting there and they're acting a certain way, I can always figure out, okay, they're probably acting like this because X, Y, and Z. They're insecure and not comfortable. This is going on. I could say something and make it worse, or I could just let it go. And most of the time I let it go. And I tell you, when life is going well and great, you actually can see the results of not feeding into things that are negative. I do feel like the energy that you put out really is the energy that you bring back into your life. A lot of times I always tell some of my closest friends, one of my girls, she's more of a vindictive type of person, very emotional and like ready to lash out. And I always am talking her off the ledge. I'm like, listen, you don't even have to do anything because karma to somebody that does something or says anything crazy to you will happen. And it doesn't need you to make it happen. And then you don't need that bad karma on you. So I'm very much that type of person where I don't ever want to put out negative energy. Even when somebody does me wrong, they just don't exist to me anymore. And that's really how I am. And I think that's more hurtful to people than anything.
When you cut them off.
When people are acting that way, they want attention. That's how I am when it comes to a breakup too, because I'm not the type of person that's going to go through something with you and we break up and then I'm going to be going back and forth. You probably just won't hear from me. I know that hurts somebody way more than you giving them the attention that they want.
That is a really astute observation. And I agree with you because when you cut them off, you stop caring and they want you to care. When did you sort of come to this understanding and realization that you're not going to feed into the drama?
I've done it before and it didn't help me. To be honest, as busy as I am, I don't even have time to do it.
Okay.
And I say this all the time too. If you keep yourself busy, then it doesn't even allow for you to be angry about things. You just have to keep it moving. And one thing I do that really works for me is when something really awful happens, I try to do something positive for somebody else, like a stranger or somebody close to me that could really use it. Either way, I just try to do something positive. And that's a practice I do. And that really does help. Me doing good things for other people makes me feel better. You know, they say this too shall pass. So whenever something is really stressful for me, I always know it's just temporary and it's just something that's going to happen because there's a lot of good things that happen all the time. So I might have like a couple of things like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But then something else amazing happens and I can move on.
How did you get this lesson? Because a lot of times when people get upset, and we're all humans, we're all flawed, a lot of people are reactive. They are emotionally invested, right? So it's hard to stop when you're sort of in a fight or an argument or whatever situation you're in and go, okay, I'm going to stop and not feed into this and actually answer a heated or emotionally charged situation with positivity. When did you sort of gain this ability? And I love that you said it's a practice because I think it's something that everyone has to work at.
Right. Well, one thing I do is I count to 10. I count from 10 backwards in my head whenever I feel like I'm about to be upset.
Okay.
I don't remember where I read that, but I read that so long ago when I was young, and it really does work. I'm really big on also not saying things that will hurt somebody's feelings that I'll regret later. You know how some people get into an argument and they'll bring out the worst and say the worst, most awful things, and you can never take that back. And so I'm aware of that too. Usually, if I'm really angry, I have a lot of thoughts in my head, but I'll never say them out loud.
How did you learn to do this?
I think it's because I used to write a lot when I was younger. And so when I got mad about things, I would write about it.
Ah,
Instead of verbally expressing myself, I was always better at writing than I was at talking.
I think you made up for that, my friend, at this point. Now, there's something that I also wanted to point out. If I were to list all of the many, many different ways that you have worked to give back and used your position and platform, I would need a week with you. But let's talk a little bit about that. You were the first ambassador for the New York Public Library System. You are the BSE's Global Diversity and Inclusion, and BSE is Brooklyn Sports Entertainment, a huge organization that manages the Nets, the Barclays Center.
The New York Liberty, we can't forget them.
Hell yeah, New York Liberty. But you are in their diversity, inclusion, and community engagement ambassador. You work with Dressed for Success. You do Coach for Kids. You have a juice bar that's super successful in Brooklyn. And in that juice bar, you give acting classes to the communities for free. You do HIV testing. So, all of this to say, you really take the time and make a number of different contributions for the community. We're all busy. And entertainment and media people, I can say just on my end and your end, it is not a job. It is a lifestyle. We work so many hours. Still, though, Angela, you really have to carve out a lot of time to give back in all these different ways. When did you realize, hey, it's really important to give back and to actually make the commitment and do it?
I would say that I've always been that way, but it just was never organized. I was always trying to do things to help people. I was the person that was like the number one babysitter when we were younger for all my friends. Like one of my first friends when I was she was the first one of us to have she had a baby young. And so I was always the one watching her kid and like helping her out and doing stuff. And I was kind of like that. I have 3 godchildren because I love everybody's kids. And so I'm always trying to like do certain things. And then even like tutoring, big sister type programs. I remember I worked in like a clinic and I volunteered there. I volunteered at the New York City Transit Museum. So I always was busy just trying to do things, but I never was organized about it. When I started actually being able to make money from hosting events and hosting parties, there would always be certain people that would ask me to do things. Like I've always been big on education.
Right.
I'm on the board for the American Foundation for the University of the West Indies. I'm also on the board for the Fund for New York City Housing Authority too, and the We Are Family Foundation.
Yeah.
Kids, the youth, and nutrition, and all of that literacy is super important to me. What I decided was all these things that I do that I make money at, I want to make sure that I make time to volunteer my services as well. Like I've worked in soup kitchens and shelters and I've done all of those things, but it's just important because I feel like you need balance always. It can't always be about making money. I understand that our time, as you get more and more successful, you may not have as much time, but it means a lot to me. I enjoy it. Some things you don't do it just for the money. And I feel like I'm in a really blessed and privileged position. There's times when I've looked at people like on Twitter, just talking about things that they need or not having money. And I'll just reach out and, what's your Cash App and send them some money.
Oh, that's so awesome.
And I don't even talk about things like that. I know some people do it and then they post it. But, there's a lot of things that I just do just because I feel like I am a good-hearted person. And I've always been like that. People always tell me, you don't talk about the things that you do. You don't really discuss it. And I feel like that's also part of an Asian upbringing too.
Oh yeah, I totally agree.
You know how you just like kind of move and keep your head down and just work and you don't talk about it?
Right.
I feel like that's kind of how, we are in that culture is very much like that. And I think that's a Caribbean culture thing too. It's work all these jobs. You're always supposed to be busy. You're always supposed to be making money. And my grandfather would always be like, save your money, buy a house. That's all he ever used to say to me all the time. I always have made time for that, though. Always made time for philanthropy. And I started my own organization now because I feel like I was so scattered. There wasn't anything that was all in one space. So I started a Well-Read, and it's called wethewellread.org. And so that is for wellness and literacy.
And did you just start this?
Yes, I actually did just start it a couple of months ago.
Okay, because I was like, I didn't see that during my research. I wanted to go back to something that you said. I think it definitely, and I wanted to kind of get you to talk a little bit more about it, but I think it definitely, like, keep your head down, work, be self-reliant, and also give back and care, but don't advertise. Mm-hmm. Humility is a big thing in the Asian community.
Yes.
My mom was always like, do it because it's right. Don't do it for press.
Right. And I think that's a woman thing too.
You think so?
Yes, because trust me, I work with two guys that are always talking about what they're doing. And and I feel like I don't really do it as much, but they're always like, I have this going, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And I feel like I can't even do that for some reason. And I do feel like as women, we downplay ourselves. Even as far as compliments, you could be like, oh, you look really nice. Oh my God, no, I don't look terrible. And we do that all the time.
Right, right.
And so it's like we're always trying to just not embrace the fact that you are really doing some dope shit. Yes. And sometimes you do have to sit back and be like, you did that. Like, you are really dope.
We definitely need to do more of that and for each other. Do you feel like you are a real good blend between the two cultures and those values that those backgrounds bring?
It is funny because I watched that movie on Netflix, Always Be My Maybe. And you know how they have like all the Chinese. And I was like, that is really like how I never realized that it was just certain things that are very cultural that happens.
Right.
And so they had a lot of that in there. And I was like, that is true. They do that. That is true. And so my dad, like I said, he has, a lot of family. And yes, I do feel like that. It's all about just work hard. Don't advertise what you're doing. Like you said, be humble and stay out of the way.
Yeah.
And my mom is the same way. My mom has worked at the same job for New York City Transit for like 35 years.
Right.
And she just goes to work every morning and she's always like the most responsible one. I'm like, Mom, when are you going to retire? And every year she's like, next year I'll retire. Next year I'll retire. My mom works 7 days a week.
That's very much an immigrant's work ethic, don't you think?
I think she don't want to be in the house with my father.
We're going to stay out of that because I don't want to get in trouble with your parents. But there's also something else that you said that I want to get to. Women do have a problem speaking out. You are an outspoken woman, but I want to make this very clear distinction. Being loud is not being outspoken per se. You could just be loud and dramatic. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
You are someone who is outspoken and bold with a purpose, not for drama. Volume doesn't mean message.
Right.
When did you sort of really supercharge your philanthropic efforts and talk about being comfortable with who you are and also knowing the difference between speaking up, but not being like obnoxious and loud and really using it for a purpose?
A lot of things that I do, I do now. I have the luxury of being able to do the things that I'm interested in doing.
Right.
Right. So even opening the juice bar, I did that because I saw the need for it in the community. I saw the need for it for myself. It always starts with what I feel like would benefit me. And then I'm like, if this benefits me, it's going to benefit other people too. That's how my ideas always start.
Right.
With that, it wasn't about making money. It was about putting something great in the community that's affordable, that's nice, that's feels like home. It's like the Cheers juice bar.
That's great.
And I really also opened it to be kind of like a meeting spot.
Right.
Like you said, we've done acting classes there with Tracy Moore. We've done Wealth Wednesdays. We used to do that once a month. And we've had all these different organizations come in and give financial advice to people.
Right.
And it's free for anybody who's HIV testing. We've done book clubs there. We've done so many different things there. And that's just because I didn't want just a juice bar. I wanted something that was like a community meeting grounds. That's a beautiful place. We have a big flat screen TV. It's comfortable. We got the couch. That was important to me. Whenever I decide I want to do something, I also think about how can this benefit other people? I don't need it to just benefit me.
So awesome.
So I started a coffee company and I'm opening a coffee shop in a few months. And I just...
Where?
It's in Bed-Stuy, Bedford and Gates.
Can you come to Manhattan for a little bit, please? We need some of that too.
You guys are expensive.
Tell me about it.
But I did that because I also know for like Black and brown people, coffee comes from our countries.
Yeah.
And we're kind of left out of the conversation. I feel like you don't look at coffee as like, oh, it's from Ethiopia. It's from Peru. People don't even really think about it so much like that. It's not marketed to us. And so it's all about inclusion too. So we have a whole program that we're starting to help people become entrepreneurs, in particular Black and brown people, and to be able to franchise.
That is so fucking awesome. And on so many levels. So where did this sense of community and like inclusion come from?
I believe if I had to think about it, like, okay, I did that segment, Ask Yee, right? And that's when people ask me for advice. When I was younger, I was always like the person that people would come to for advice about things. And I always was very rational. And I think that's a Capricorn trait also. And I totally believe that I have all the traits of being a rabbit also, because I was born in the year of the rabbit. And we care a lot about being successful. That is really important to me, because for so long I didn't really have I didn't have money for so long. So I'm always scared that something's going to happen. And
Sure.
so I'm always trying to prepare myself so that in case this doesn't go that way, then at least I know I have this going on so that if I can't pay my mortgage, I know I have this over here. I had this like I bought a new house. In my head, I'm like, okay, if everything falls apart, I could sell this house and then still be able to survive off of this. And then I still have this savings. I'm always trying to think like, what can I do to make sure that I'm okay?
It's funny that you said that because I share the same trait in that regard. I want to make sure I'm able to take care of myself.
Right.
And it's interesting that you and I share that similarities. And I'm also, again, wondering if it's a cultural thing. Now, what led you to the organization that you just started, that you just told me about, your foundation? Tell me a little bit more about it.
But I just felt like I was all over the place. I was doing so many different things, but it wasn't connected.
Okay.
Every year, like at my job, they'll be like, okay, can you give us a list? And I'll have like this huge list of all the charity events that I did and all the schools that I talked at and all the mentoring that I did. I have a book club. I have a running club. I have the juice bar. I have a pressed juice company. I have the coffee company. And I was like, I just need one space where all these things can live and I can build that up. I decided to just start Well Read, and I called my partner, Tony, and I told him I really want to start this organization. And I also feel like with the companies that I have, I want to make sure there's a give back component for those as well. So with the pressed juices, I want to make sure we get those into the hands of the school system, because I feel like kids aren't given the right nutrients in school and they give them all this crappy food and then they wonder why they have ADD and ADHD and all of that. I felt like somehow, some way, at some point, like soon, I want to make sure that we get these things in our neighborhoods, get them in the schools. And the best way to do that is to have an organization that you can say, hey, we're raising money for this. This is what we're doing. Or a portion of the proceeds goes here. So I'm still figuring all of those things out. But I have the book club, and I've been doing that just because I wanted to have a book club. I know you had Angie Thomas on. I did her book on the come up when that came out. So
Yes.
I hosted that for her.
Angie is fantastic. Another woman that I absolutely adore and respect. There's many elements that sort of thread through all the different things that you're doing. Your sense of community, your sense of giving back, your sense of empathy and compassion for others. I think the other thing that's so interesting, going back to the coffee point, I mean, I love how you're using, coffee and its origin to give back essentially to the community and the people that it came from.
Right.
Also, good health and good nutrition is an expensive privilege. Your juice bar, it is so awesome that you're tackling health. A lot of what's out there that's dressed as healthy products, it really isn't. There's so much out there that looks healthy, but it's actually so full of calories and so high in sugar. Whereas your juice bar is actually not that. It's actually healthy.
Right.
And you're giving it back to a community that would normally have to work a lot harder for it. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. And I think people, even for myself, when I first started juicing, I wasn't juicing properly. I was going to these chain juice places that were using like orange juice, apple juice, and adding all this sugar in and pureed fruits. For me, the main thing was to have these whole fruits and vegetables that were not adding anything into it. And you can see exactly what's going on from the actual fruit into the blender or to the juicer, and you see it and you understand the health benefits of it.
Right.
That was really, really important to me because I thought I was juicing properly. You get a strawberry banana smoothie, you think you did something, but it's important for people to know, like, this is good for your digestive system. This is good for, if you need some vitamin C, this is good to wake you up. This is good right before a workout. There's so many different things. And I always tell people you have to vary what you're doing. You can't get the same thing every time. You want to make sure you switch it up.
Right.
Make sure you get your wheatgrass shots. During the pandemic, we saw how difficult it's been for people with their health. That's really why I did it. And also, like you said, some of these juice bars are super expensive.
Most of them, yeah.
Our juices start at $6, and that we don't make a lot of money at the juice bar. The price of produce goes up and down. It fluctuates depending what's in season, what's not in season, but our prices stay the same.
Right.
That's not something that's like, I'm about to get rich, I could quit my job.
Right.
That's something that's like, it maintains itself. People have jobs in the neighborhood. It's doing something that's great for the community.
You making money off of a juice bar is not why you started the business. I mean, it's really about giving back to the community.
Right. And that is really the purpose. Now it would be nice. No.
Listen, I'm going. But I just really love the idea of inclusion, which sort of threads through all of these efforts that you're doing. Can you tell me one instance where somebody said something to you? And this is a big question because you're involved with 1,000 things. Was there one experience that somebody said something to you, Angela, that made you really realize what I'm doing really made a difference and you take that with you?
Usually it happens at the juice bar, to be honest. I know we talked about the juice bar a lot, but when we first opened, I remember we had this big grand opening, right? And like Common came, 50 Cent came, Jeezy came. It was all the locks were there. It was like all these celebrities. And it's not a big space, but it was really dope to me that all these people came out to show support. Fresher was there. It was just so many people. And
It's huge.
the cops came and they were like, y'all can't just come and do this and not tell nobody, because it really shut the whole block down. And, this is my first time having a business, like a brick and mortar business. So I didn't even know you're supposed to call the cops, let them know. I didn't even know that. I just think, okay, we're going to have this little, grand opening. The next day, I was leaving the juice bar and this kid comes up to me. He's like, hey, Angela, I just want to tell you, thank you so much for putting this in our community. It made me realize that I can open a business also. And it's not something I thought about before, but now I feel like I can do it.
How did that make you feel when you got that message?
Man, that was so amazing to me. I was like, see, sometimes I don't even think about, like, I'm just thinking about the rewards of having something that benefits the community as far as health. I'm not even thinking about how people look at you and see you do something and then think I can do that too. And it wasn't even something I had considered before that. And even just being there and people come in and they're like, I had high blood pressure. And then I heard you talking about the juices. So I started coming to the juice bar and now I juice all the time and my blood pressure is normal. Just to see that it can make a difference in somebody's life.
Right.
Like one guy came in during the pandemic and he was like, I used to have this big pot belly and I was, asthma. And he said, I started coming here and he slimmed down and he was telling me this. And he was like, I never even thought about juicing before. So it just shows me how important it is.
I mean, that must be incredible to get these messages where you're literally actively shaping someone else's life for the better.
Right.
Does it sort of renew your commitment to keep going and to keep doing the things that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. Because for myself, that's why I started the pressed juice company, because people kept saying, I need this in my neighborhood. I need this. And I said, you know what? I'm starting a pressed juice company. It was just an idea I had one day. And I made some calls and got the team together. And I really wanted to do it just because I wanted those benefits to reach everybody. But I just knew I didn't have the manpower myself or the time to be able to do it. Sometimes you could feel like overwhelmed and this is too much work and I don't feel like doing this anymore. But then you think about how many people are relying on it and appreciate it. And you're like, okay, I got to make it happen.
I mean, you're human, though. You must get exhausted from time to time. So how do you recharge yourself?
I try to get massages whenever I can. That helps me so much. And especially now I've been like on Zooms like nonstop during this whole pandemic, just sitting in one spot and I haven't been like walking around the way that I used to. So that's important to me. But I always try to plan little fun things for myself. And I try to always have one day where I have a super light day. And I don't even care if like everything else is jam packed. As long as I have something to look forward to, I'll plan a vacation like 6 months in advance. Things like that really, really help me. And I plan for it and I'll be like, okay, and now I'm going to go shopping for my vacation and have something that I'm like, I can't wait. I can't wait.
I think that's amazing. I think another thing that women really struggle with is wellness and self-care.
Mm-hmm.
It's really nice to see somebody actually taking the time and going, well, I work my ass off.
Right.
So I'm going to do a little something for myself. Being a woman in the world, there's still a lot of strides that need to be made. There's a lot of inequities, some that we recognize, some as a society, we still have a lot of work to really acknowledge, let's just say. You're the lone female voice of a hugely popular show. Your other co-hosts have some very big personalities and you remain pretty centered. So where do you draw that from and how do you stay positive?
I think that comes from outside of work. That comes from you having a really strong support system of people that you care about, people that care about you, making time for them, making time for your family, making sure that you're not so caught up in what you have to do outside of the people that really have your back and you really have their back, just making sure that that's good. I feel like no matter what anybody says or does, there's people that really know me for real in real life, that know who I am as a person. And that matters to me more than anything else.
Excellent. But I will say this, that is really hard to do because there's a fair amount of criticism and pressure, obviously, in any capacity. But you're in the limelight. So your expectation in those pressures and the scrutiny and the criticism that you get is extreme. I mean, that's got to be so hard to take. But how do you still kind of hold the course?
I mean, it's hard for me all the time. I will say this at work, being the only woman like in the room all the time, we get into it. Like just the other day, we had an interview with this professor from Columbia. You probably heard about him, Dr. Carl Hart.
Yes.
And so I was trying to understand his point of view and where he was coming from. But the guys I work with, they were just not listening to the message and just kind of going at him.
Right.
And I really was like doing my research before I did the interview. And sometimes it can get really frustrating when things happen and no one's listening to you. And that happens to me all the time.
Right.
So to me, I just say what I have to say because sometimes I can't just sit there and talk to a brick wall. So I just say what I have to say, make my argument, and then I just let it go. Sometimes you have to know what battles you want to fight. And it's more about my own peace. I can't sit here and argue with people all the time to try to make them feel or understand where I'm coming from when they're determined not to. Sometimes you just have to realize we agree to disagree. Go ahead, do your thing. It's not that important to me. For me, it's a work in progress because it's been going on for so long. I feel like I'm just used to it. You know what I mean? But you never want to feel like that.
Right.
But I also don't want to drive myself crazy trying to fix something that I can't fix.
Fair. That's a tough line to toe, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but I also am smart enough and experienced enough in what we've been doing all this time to know that I might be mad right now and irritated, but it won't really matter so much in an hour.
Right. I think it's the idea of having a voice, right? And being heard.
Right.
In your case specifically, actually being heard, not being talked over or cut off. And then also in sort of the broader sense of being heard, for people to actually take the time to slow down and to listen to what you have to say. And then there's a very delicate dance that you have to do. If you push harder, you're viewed as a shrill bitch in many ways.
Right. Yeah, they'll be like, why is she talking over? And like, they could talk over me all day, but if I try to get my word in or jump in, people will just really attack you. It doesn't matter what you do. It's never enough for some people. Some people appreciate you and some people will always be like, she talks too much. She doesn't talk enough. She hates women. She's always defending women. No matter what you do, everybody won't be happy. You can't try to please people. You can't try to force people to understand where you're coming from. All you can do is be yourself and know that the people who get you will get you. And some people just won't.
And yeah, but that's easier said than done. So where did you get that sense? Because I know that's still a work in progress. Again, you're a human being. So it's not always easy. I mean, have you always sort of been that way where you're secure with who you are? Or is it something that you always have to kind of consciously remind yourself, like, I know who I am, so you can just keep all that out there?
I think it's because for myself, it was a gradual ascent into where I am now. And it also wasn't under the scrutiny of social media. So I was able to work to the point where, I started off as an assistant. Then I started doing marketing. Then I started on the radio. And when I started at Sirius, it wasn't like a whole lot of people were listening yet.
Right.
And so I had the ability then to get better at what I was doing, work on it. It wasn't Twitter, it wasn't Instagram yet. And so I was really able to function. I think it's a lot harder now just because if you make a mistake, everyone sees it. I think back then I was allowed to make a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And also be able to build that tough skin. That's not something that comes overnight. You can't be thrust into the position that I'm in without any type of preparation. So I feel like it's been such a gradual process that I've been building like these layers and layers and layers on myself, and also building a foundation under me so that I'm confident that no matter what, I'll be okay, because there are enough people in this business behind the scenes that know me and that know my work ethic and that know that I'm a good person, that I'll always be okay. Certain people will always have my back. And that really helps when you get into situations. It's worse when people don't know you, or when people don't like you, or when you burned a lot of people.
Right.
It's different when people are like, nah, Angela, that is not that. So whatever it is people are trying to portray you as, we already know that's not who she is. So it helps when there's people behind the scenes in those positions that know that, so that it kind of cancels out the people who don't know anything. Because I also am aware and smart enough to know that there's a lot of people that, like negativity. They like to be on social media. They don't know you, but they enjoy trying to come at you, be funny, have a moment. And I don't like to give anybody the pleasure of me responding. If you notice anything about me, I barely ever respond to trolls.
Right.
Because I just know that's what they want. And so I don't feed into that.
I love that you said that even if you have super tough skin, and I don't doubt that, but that's got to be excruciatingly difficult at this point because people love to judge. People love to rip you apart. And, they're just behind the computer, in their room, in their house, completely anonymous. For people who look at you and say they haven't found the stride that you have, what would your advice be to them to embrace not only who you are, but to also do what they can to give back to other people?
Well, as far as, being comfortable with who you are, that's patience. Like you have to really be patient with yourself. You have to have conversations with yourself. You have to forgive yourself for things because guess what? We all are going to mess up. There's times that I get things wrong. There's times that things didn't come out the way I planned for them to. There's times that I'm so exhausted that I wasn't and doing so many different things that I wasn't as prepared as I would like to be. We're not perfect. We're not machines. And so it's okay if you mess up. You can acknowledge it and move on because what might seem like the end of the world to you is like not a big deal to somebody else. You might feel like everybody's coming at you, but truthfully, people have their own lives and a million things that they have going on and they do that and then they move on. The more you dwell on it, the more other people dwell on it. Sometimes you just have to be like, damn, I messed up and just move on. And I think it does help to write things down. So when something happens, like instead of, venting to the world, just write it down for yourself. Always remember that we are all trying to improve. So you're not going to get everything right. You just got to forgive yourself. And I know that for me too. I don't always get everything right. I say things wrong all the time. Every single morning, I'm doing 3 rumor reports, 2 front page newses, ASCII interviews,
Right.
and it's a lot of preparation. I try my hardest to get everything right. And sometimes it just doesn't happen. All you can do is try your hardest. And as long as you did, the only time that I really get mad at myself is if I know I didn't do what I should have done and I wasn't prepared. Then I'm like, that's on me.
Right. And what about giving back to the community? What would your advice be to them that everybody can give back and make a difference?
We all have time, and time is more valuable than money in a lot of cases. So you can always gather up your crew and say, let's do something positive this day. Let's go volunteer our services because that means a lot. You can go online and see what other people are doing and post about it so that you're actually putting it out to your network. You can show up. I think that's important. If you have a friend that's starting a business or if there's an after school program or you could be a big brother, big sister, any of those things, just show up, donate some time. There's so many different organizations that can use your help. Just even going to the hospital and seeing what you can do, donating toys. You can get inexpensive toys for kids and it means so much. I think we take a lot for granted and we think, oh, that's not a big deal. But, sometimes the littlest thing to a person is such a big deal. Even if you see somebody struggling with something online and you just drop them a nice note or even reaching out to people who you know and sending a text message or calling them. A lot of people don't call each other anymore and talk.
Yeah.
Those things are really important if you know somebody's going through a rough time. Even if it's something little where you're like, okay, I know this person, got laid off and they may not have it. And let me send them a $20 Uber Eats gift card. It's just little things like that mean so much to people.
I think you've got such a beautiful heart. What else can we expect from Angela Yee?
Well, definitely the next thing is I am opening this coffee shop. So that's front and center. I have my store in Detroit, Private Label Extensions. And that was really important to me. And we actually just opened that last month. And so we're giving out a scholarship.
That's so awesome.
Yes, for cosmetology school. But everything I do is for a purpose, because I think there's not enough of us in that business. We buy that here, but we're not owning the stores and we're not having the connections that we should have. So that was important for me to set that up and to support everybody else that is doing that in the beauty and hair business. And so I have that going on. But what I'm really looking forward to is I went to school for writing, and I tell you, I write all the time. So for myself personally, I know that that's something I've been putting off, but I do plan to be doing a whole lot more writing coming up. So we can look forward to that. And I'm really excited for it.
Is that a tease for like a book?
Maybe so. Yeah, maybe so. But
I see that glint in your eye. I'm not letting that go. So if a book happens from you, you'll have to come back. Now, I need to ask you this. Our signature sign off. I ask all of my guests, let me know who you are and what you represent.
Look, when you said what you represent, the first thing I thought of was Brooklyn. But
that says a lot, girl. Yeah. So sign us off, Angela.
All right. Well, this is Angela Yee, and I represent progress. I want every day to be better than I was the day before.
Tremendous thanks to the amazing Angela Yee for making time to come hang out with us here and for all of the incredible things she's doing to positively contribute. What an inspiring woman. Make sure you have your running shoes on to keep up with Angela. You can find her on her social media. Also, check out her nonprofit, Well Read, and be sure to stop in at Juices for Life in Brooklyn. I'll have those links in the episode description for you. And I got some great news for you. Every single episode of Reppin is now available for download. So get the show on your mobile devices. Take us to work. Take us to school. Take us to lunch, because, we love lunch. Or take us wherever you go. We have been so lucky to have some truly amazing, talented people who have guested on this show. All of them have shared personal stories, their strengths, their truths, and love with you. So you really don't want to miss any of them. Reppin is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. So subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you. And you can always find me on Twitter at Reppin Podcast and follow me on Instagram at Reppin_podcast. Thanks always to my fantastic technical director and musical composer, Nelson Pinero, and love and thanks always to Gracie Kong. Reppin is a Suburban Outlaw Productions. Until next time, stand up and represent.